Welcome to the Zamtel mobile app incubator tutorials page. Today what we're going to be doing is creating the home screen for the TravelMate application. Now the first thing we're going to do is be able to load in the library that we're going to be using for our entire logic. Now to be able to do this, you just open the folder where you have your TravelMate application. For me it's in Eclipse, TravelMate. Enter into the libs folder and then copy and paste the lib_travelmate.jar file that you downloaded. Now let's begin. The first thing is we have the TravelMate header. This is just for it to look very nice. The TravelMate header is found in the drawable, and we can see image home header. Now we also have this image space here. This is where the icon goes, and we have an icon for the plane, we have an icon for the train, and we also have an icon for the bus. If we look at the XML version, we will find that we're using a linear layout. Note that there are two kinds of layouts. There's linear layout and relative layout. Linear layout lays everything in one direction. It's either you go vertical or you go horizontal. So first thing, we're going to put the attributes, which is the standard width and height, which will both equal to match parent. We're also putting the orientation. Here our layout, we center it to true for horizontal center, and also the gravity is center vertical, so we have it nicely in the middle. We're also setting the orientation so that the linear layout knows that we're moving from up to down. Now the first thing that we had was the image view. The first image view belongs to the header. As you can see, our ID is tackled to get header. Then we also set the source to accept the drawable, and we have our height, which is equal to wrap content, and our width, which is equal to fill parent, so that we can take up the entire space here. Also, we have our view flipper. Our view flipper is the one that enables us to go from up to down with that nice texture from left to right, depending on what we selected. For example, if I want to move left, I do that, and if I want to move again, the view flipper is the one that enables us to traverse through those images. Within the view flipper, we only have one image view, which is the text view, which is the image view of the actual icon. So here we have it showing that we're using img_icon. The width is 300 dp and the height is also 300 dp. Aside from that, we only have one text view which shows the information of the label. Like if it's a bus, it should show bus. If it's train, it should show train, like you can see below there. When we change, it changes with it. Okay, so now let's go into the home.java. So the first thing we're going to do in here is just take care of the basic groundworks. Like we start with the home, we say public class home. As usual, we're extending an activity because we're using a standard activity. We're also implementing the on-click listener interface because we want to be able to click on that image. And we're also getting the gesture listener from the gesture detector because we want to be able to slide across the screen. Now we do some basic housekeeping. For example, we have our image view, the icon. We have the information label, which is our text view. We also need to know at which particular position we are in the array. Aside from that, we also have the view flipper and the various animations that constitute the view flipper, so that we slide in nicely, gracefully, left and right. We also need to have the gesture detector so that we know when we're having a gesture event. We also have the main travel type, and we also have the travel type basic. So we have the array and we have the basic object, because at any moment from the array we want to be able to pick the current object depending on the position. So if you can see in here, our context view, our content view is going to be the home.xml. This is normal. We're also implementing the super constructor method. We're also hiding the action bar. If you can see, we've hidden the action bar. You can see it on the top there. Next, we're going to assign these images and text views to the actual ones in here. So the first one we're going to do is the icon image. We're going to use find view by ID, image icon, also the icon flipper, the label, and now after that's done, that's the basic housekeeping, the variables that we're going to be using. We're going to use the detector to be able to say that the gesture I want to listen to is from this class. As you can see, we're using this, which is here, the gesture listener. That's what we mean by this, because we've implemented it. So the first thing is we want to be able to click on the image when we are finished. So we're saying that we set the on-click listener, which we implemented on on-click listener, to this, as you can see. Then now we also have to be able to initialize the slide in and slide out animations. Now in this folder we have the information to do with the sliding, to show the duration and the direction in which it's going to come in through. This is sliding left. As you can see, we referenced sliding left here, and we're loading it into this class, as you can see. So we do that for all directions, sliding left and sliding right. For the process request, we're going to I'll show you soon enough. Now, next is when we want to be able to click an icon, like a bus or a train, to be able to go into the next one, we are going to have the on-click event, which comes from implementing the on-click listener that we said is going to be in this. So now what we want to do is say that if the view that has been clicked is the image icon, then we create the new intent, which is for viewing the actual operator. We're going to put an extra data of the current transport type object, and we start the activity. But for now, this is not very important because we're only dealing with the home screen. That will be explained next week. Now, when you implement the gesture detector and the gesture listener, you have to get all the methods that come from it, because we're using an interface. We have the on-touch event, which here we have set this, the detector on-touch event is equal to motion event. We also have on-down, which is false because we're not looking at down. We also have show progress, which we're not going to be using. You can go through this to find out which ones you want to be using at any similar time. Now, the most important one is the on-fling. The on-fling means that when we slide left or slide right, it's like we're flinging across. Now, we need to calculate this. As you can see here, in computers, we calculate this is point x0, y0, all the way up to this side. So we must calculate at which side we are flinging at any particular time. As you can see, we have to calculate for all these. So now, we're going to set our sensitivity to 50, and we're going to calculate that our swipe left, we get the x variable subtracted from the E2, which is from motion 1, sliding from the left side to the right side. We calculate, and if it's greater than the intensity, then we subtract a position from when we got the travel types. And when we go the other way, we add a position to be able to move from hierarchy, from the travel type, from up to down. So let's look at getting the actual travel type. Now, to get the actual travel type, we have the get JSON, which throws a client protocol exception, an IO exception, and a JSON exception. So now, first thing is we gave you, as you download the .wa project, which is the Java project for where we store all our operations as the server, we have this URL here. Now this is the default URL as we explained last time. So the first thing we're going to do is create an array list called modes. This modes is going to be an array list of transport types because we want to be able to add them depending on how big they are. We don't know yet how many they are, so we can't use an array. We're also going to open an HTTP client and pass the URL, which is here, to say that the service we want to get is get transport type. There are no other parameters. We're getting it from the JSON service from the TravelMate server application. So when we get the response of this get, we want to instantiate a JSON object because what we're receiving is the JSON. Then we also want to get the status to see whether we actually got information or not. So if the status is 200, which means it was a success and we got a response, we want to create a new HTTP entity to be able to hold what we just got. So the response string, being the JSON object, comes into entity utils.toString, which is our actual response. We convert it to a string and pass it on to the JSON array. In this JSON array, we transgress through it and get objects one by one. As you can see, we're saying this JSON object is equal to object array.getJSON object. Very simple, very straightforward. Then we're saying that remember modes is the travel type. Modes is the travel type array list. So we're adding a new one where we're getting the ID, the name, and the icon URL from the JSON objects. When this for loop finishes going through all the transport types, it's going to return this array, as you can see here. Now, HTTP requests must be separate from the standard UI thread. So how we're going to be able to use this getJSON is by creating a new asynchronous task called process request, which, as you can see, extends async task. It enters a string, which you see here returns string, and we also put in a void, and we pass in a string as well, which you can see here as string. Now, what we're going to do is set the transport type array equal to getJSON, because here we return, if you remember, here we're returning the transport type, so that's what we're getting. We just want to do it in a separate thread from the URI thread. When that's done, we're going to set the label to the new, or to the first. As you can see in the array, the position is 0. We're putting it to the first one, and we're also getting its name. On top of that, we're changing the icon to get the first one's icon by its ID, which is done in this icon method here, where we put in an ID and we're able to get if it's the ID 2, 1, and 3. ID 2 belonging to the plane, ID 1 belonging to the bus, and ID 3 belonging to the train. When we're done with that, we flip here. As you can see, we're setting in the animation. Yes. And after all that's done, we have this nice sliding that goes on here. And when we click, like we said, we'll be able to get this information here, which we're going to be doing next week. And with that, thank you very much for viewing the tutorial, and we hope to see you next week.